Hello, Stereo Azimuth here, and this is a Singxer SA-1 review, or more in-depth review, I should say, from my first video of unboxing and quick review. I want to thank Andreas S. for pointing out some shortcomings of some things that I might have should have made clear before doing that review. I've already responded to that video in the text, and you can go back to that video and look. But I just wanted to make a video maybe explaining fuller of everything in my review and how I came up with the conclusions that I did about the SA-1 amp. The first thing that Andres says was that I should change the title of my of the previous video to unboxing, or just unboxing. I changed it to unboxing and quick review because that's kind of what it was. So that's probably more accurate to what it really is. Okay, so once again, the quick review, and you can kind of see it in that video. One of the things about the unboxing is that I go through and I look at the inside, or at least a picture of the inside of the amp, and I made a few assumptions and made a ass out of you and me, basically. And one of the things about the SA-1 that I want to make clear is that the SA-1 is a fully discrete headphone amplifier. And there are no op amps or OPAs in the signal path. I pointed out some OPAs or some op amps, but those either have to deal with other parts of the circuitry, whether they're power circuitry, whether they're other things. I did not trace out the whole board. I did not see a schematic of the board. Just know that it is a fully discrete amp. And so my apologies to Singxer and that making any sort of assumptions. Made that very clear. And I'll put a link to this video on that video as well. So hopefully that'll get translated back over here. The other thing is, you don't know me. I don't know you. You don't know me or my setup or how I came to the conclusions of what I did. How long did I have the amp? What are the other pieces of equipment that I have that I hooked it up to? And that's a fair thing. And you see my cat like jumping around in the background. That is Lizzie, by the way. So just so we can clear up how long I had the amp. I had the amp of like 4 days. I think between when I did the original unboxing to when I did the review is like 4 or 5 days. Something like that. Usually when I listen to things, you can come to some conclusions pretty right away. Once you listen to enough equipment, you should be able to tell, especially if you hook it up to your own equipment. I mean, the best way to experience gear is on your own system. I mean, I love going to shows. I love listening to things. But we all know you're not getting a true evaluation unless you can put it against other equipment that you have, not only versus other equipment that are the same, like two of the same headphone amps, but also you could hook it up to everything that you know and are familiar with already. And that's what I did. And the equipment that I have that is my setup is I have a very high-end Theta DS Pro Basic 2 DAC. It is a very high-end DAC. Yes, it is designed by Mike Moffett. It is not true multi-bit. It has PCM67 DAC chips that are hybrid chips, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. Just know that it is a very, like, high-end DAC. It's a very revealing DAC. I also have a shit Bifrost DAC. And I think, I don't know if might have had a Modi multi-bit at the time that I had that, because I recently upgraded from the Modi multi-bit to the shit Bifrost multi-bit. I had them before, and now I have them again. They are that good. So just going back to the equipment, though, both the Theta and the Bifrost to me are very sort of dynamic DACs. They have a very large like swing. They're very sort of aggressive sounding. They're very, my friend calls it aggro, where they're like kind of aggressive sounding. And I would say that. I would say that the Theta definitely has some sort of like authority to it, some weight to it. And when I hooked it up to the SA-1, that I wasn't really getting that personality out of the DAC. I felt that it was very sort of soft, sort of rounded. The transients were sort of rounded. And I didn't really get the sense that it was conveying to me, at least the DAC that it was hooked up to. Now, other equipment or other DACs may do it just as better, but I just wasn't feeling it. The one thing I will say about the headphones that I use, so going from the equipment to the headphones, is I have HD 600s. I also have some HD 650s. I also have these. These are my IAMs that I'm using right now. My Moondrop Starfields. I have these nice PMX2s, which are basically Oppo modded PM2s. They're planar dynamic opens. They're very unlike other headphones, but I try to use tried and true like the Sennheisers because I know they're very popular. And those are ones that I can kind of trust because I've had those the longest. I know the sound of those the longest. I know how hard they are to drive. I've heard them on a variety of different amplifiers. And I know their sound very well. And I know how they kind of react to things. And so that is where kind of I base my conclusions, where it's like some softness, some sort of roundness. I will say on the PMX2s that are lower impedance planars, it did get a little more aggressive sounding, but I just still didn't think that it had the authority and weight of other amplifiers that I mentioned. I may have mentioned, I can't remember, the shit Molinier 1, the shit Molinier 2, Molinier 2, those are some very weighty amplifiers. You can see in the background I have a shit Ragnarok amp. I mean, that one is definitely very, it's very open sounding, like solid state amp, but it's also a speaker amplifier too. So, I mean, I'm not going to compare like a very high end dollar amp to, like a $600 amp, but that just goes to say, like, that's, I know the sound of things, and I can appreciate that sound. And so I think that there are some limitations to the SA-1, but I also think that there are some advantages as well. So don't get me wrong. And I pointed those out in the video that, it does have balanced in, it does have balanced out, it does have unbalanced in and unbalanced out, which a lot of amps don't have. So it has a lot of flexibility for input and output. The sort of like bad side is I don't really think that as far as like an amp, it didn't really wow me. It didn't really grab a hold of me and say, look how much what I can do, even in high gain. Which the high gain, another thing that Andres S said is like, I didn't know how to change the gain because somebody sent me an amp and said, hey, check it out. And I said, okay, fine, I'll check it out. And the gain settings are on the bottom, which is very sort of unconventional for a headphone amplifier because you are changing the gain because of different headphones have different impedances and you need a different sort of like gain structure sometimes because like IMs, you may want low impedance. Sennheisers are harder to drive headphones. You may want a higher gain. So have it on the bottom is usually a set and forget. Like some phono pre's, even the shit Manny has switches on the bottom, which is usually like a set and forget kind of thing, and not not something that you would change gain a lot. So, but I figured it out. I mean, pretty easy to change the gain. It is a little bit cumbersome to like lift it up and change the gain on the bottom. But let's go back to the comparison of other amps. I kind of got ahead of myself. When you have a balanced in and balanced out connection, I would expect like a lot of authority and power, because not a lot of people need like balanced, right? When I think balanced, I think of like you need all that power because there's too much, on the, on the unbalanced side. Like you need that balanced configuration. So, but I just wasn't, getting it. Even in high gain, it wasn't like a lot to drive like the Sennheisers. It did drive the planers fairly well, but even in high gain, it wasn't like what I would expect in high gain, I guess you would say. Other amplifiers that are like balanced, like I mentioned before, the Schiit Molnir 1, the Schiit Molnir 2, there are some very powerful amplifiers for balanced. The Monoprice Liquid Platinum in balanced, very authoritative. That has a more, also it has, that one also has a very sort of like rounder sort of tone to it, very similar to the SA-1. So I mean, I still stand by my review. I know that there were some things like left out, so I'm hoping I'm filling in the gaps for everyone to let you know where that stands. Because I think that, other unbalanced amps that I would kind of compare it to would be the Gilmore Light MK2. Very sort of similar sort of sound. Because like in solid state, you would expect it to sound like very sort of harsh, steely, very, sort of hard to listen to, not a lot of low end, kind of bright. And then like tubes, you would expect like warmth, woolly, big, full. And the SA-1 was kind of in between that. It kind of had some softer transients. It kind of had a little bit of an open sound, but it didn't really sound, I mean, I never really got solid state harshness or brightness, or where it just wanted to make me, take my headphones and throw them against the wall. It still sounded decent. It was a decent sounding amp. It was like an amp, and that's why I gave it like a B. I think it did well. I think it fits well within its price range. I think that if you like that kind of sound and you're afraid to go the solid state route, it might be for you, because especially of all the flexibility that it adds. If you just had one amp to sit on your desk, you have a DAC, and maybe you got a couple of different sources, unbalanced, balanced. You got a couple of different headphones that you use, balanced, unbalanced. It might, and you want that kind of sound. So all I'm here as a reviewer is to say what my experience is, what equipment that I use to get, to have that experience. But there's still no better experience than what is in, your own setup. So I'm just trying to convey that experience, and, just reading the reviews, the other reviews on the SA-1 are very sort of similar. Usually when I do a review, I try not to let the other reviewers, I try to like not look at it, so I can have my own conclusions, and I can base my own conclusions off of it. Then a lot of times I'll write some stuff down, I'll write some notes down, and then go back and then look at the reviews and see, see if my consensus is very similar to other reviewers. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't, and that's fine. One of the things that I wanted to say also, too, is that one of the things I wrote in my notes is that it's the SA-1 is very polite, like the girl next door you take home to mom. And it's also, the transients are kind of blunted and rounded, like I said. It sounds sort of open and airy. So, but it's not going to be like a very authoritative amp like a Jotunheim 2 or a Molnir 2. It's kind of a different sort of amp in that regard as well. It is a clean amp. no real harsh qualities. It just may not be quite as powerful or loud, or just like very sort of, I don't know, dynamic or hard hitting or slammy or whatever sort of word that you want to put there. So hopefully that clears everything up. That clears all the rest of the, what you're thinking is out there, what I tried, and what my equipment and what my setup is. I have a lot of different amps. I have a Gilmore clone. I do have a Gilmore Light clone. Like I said, I also have a Ragnarok 2. I also have a Eddy Current Black Widow solid state amp. And the tube amps that I have a Shit Valley 1 and a Shit Valley 2 Plus. Although if you ask Jason Stoddard from Shit, he does not pronounce it Valley, he pronounces it Valley. That's for a different time. And then I also have a Torpedo T1 amp that's actually kind of behind the Ragnarok. You may be able to see a little bit. There it is right there on the other side. So this other stuff is like recording equipment, and then the other stuff is just, like kind of powered. So this is my whole headphone rig, just so you can see with my Ragnarok 1, not Ragnarok 2. So hopefully that helps clear some things up. And I appreciate all the feedback so that I can become a better reviewer for you guys and, share my experiences that I have. And hopefully everybody can learn something. So thanks very much. I'm Stereo Azimuth. Hit me up in the comments, and we'll see you guys later.